everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube, or welcome back if this is your 13th Walker Season 2 episode review. I'm gonna be completely honest. How do I say this correctly? I like this episode. I have a couple of critiques with it, and I'm curious to see where it goes from here, and I will hold full judgment until we get to that moment. Because with this week's episode, we got the fallout from the Walker-Davison race. It was mainly one side, like they didn't really focus much on the race. Aftermath of it, they were more focused on the whole, obviously, Grandpa Walker being arrested, and then the whole mystery, did he actually kill Mr. Marv Davison? Was that even in the car? And us as the viewers, we were left going into the episode not even knowing what the hell was going to happen, because we didn't know. We just kind of expected that maybe things would be I don't know, I really don't know I didn't know what to think, because that wasn't even something that really crossed my mind. I know they had arguments, we know they had conflict for years, but the fact that murder was even something that was even on the cards, it felt a little bit, it felt interesting of a choice. And now that we're delving into that this week, but I feel like I didn't have really much of a problem with how they resolved it. It kind of gave a different layer, but I don't know. Let's go for the butcher because normally when I talk about it in detail, maybe that helps me clear my head a little bit, because this is the first time I'm actually expressing my thoughts and putting it out there on the world. So let's go for the butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Walker. Let's get our usual rigmarole. Let's just jump right in. So we begin immediately after the fallout. Walker, it's been a couple of days, a few days, maybe even a week. Walker Ranch is currently closing down. They're moving out. I'm assuming they're being moved to storage units. I'm assuming because they don't even have a new place lined up yet. So the Walkers are kicked out of their ranch. The Davisons won. So, of course, the Davisons are like, yeah, get the fuck off. You guys are done. You lose. So everyone's packing. Everyone's getting ready to go. Cordell just finished a very... we're going to assume a lovemaking session with Jerry. It's still very weird to say sex for them. It's still weird. They're in love, so I'm going to call it lovemaking. Jerry just suggests they just stay in bed all day, just kind of not really worry about it, but they really can't do that because obviously Cordell's got a lot to do in terms of just the closing and also making sure his dad tries to get out of prison, or that person jail. So there's a lot on his mind today. There really is, and he's not really 100% focused into himself right now. So the only thing Jerry can offer him as advice is that every day, on a day like this, a day you're moving, a day you're adapting, you're changing, you want to have one good thing. What is the one good thing you're going to take away from this day? Which is kind of an interesting way. No matter how bad a day could be for anyone, what is the one good thing that happened? Focus on that and use that as your kind of your check mark for the day, if that makes any lick of sense. But the main task at hand for Cordell is because the Walker Ranch is shutting down. They don't know what the plan is for the Davison when they take over, is that they have to say goodbye to their stable hands. The people who was actually running the ranch. And honestly, again, I have no idea. I even forgot, wait, they have stable... I know that Cassie's a stable hand now, but wait, there were other stable hands? There's 10 people in this lineup, and I'm like, y'all were working for the Walkers? I didn't even know that. I thought it was just Grandpa Walker running things by himself. I didn't freaking know. I grew up. I watched Smallville a couple years ago, and they didn't even have money to afford just themselves. They let alone another help. So, but yeah, Cordell has to go and say goodbye to them. Let them go. Give them a little gift bag of a severance package, because obviously financially they can't support anything more. And honestly, the stable hands give a valid point on you guys betted the entire ranch knowing that at least 10 people depend on their livelihood. Cassie only took it as a side job, or not a side hustle, but she still is a ranger. That's her primary source of income now. For these guys, this was it. This was their only their only jobs. And the fact that Cordell didn't even think, and that was another thing like I didn't even think of because I didn't even know there were still like I thought Grandpa Walker suggesting it was like this is his first one. I didn't know he had a bunch. They didn't even matter to the plot. Like maybe I missed a reference, maybe I missed something, but like I never even heard we had stable hands. I really didn't know. So they're all mad at Walker. They're all not happy with the Walkers right now. So that's another group of people that are not happy with the Walkers this week. We got over to the trial where Liam is going to be defending his father, at least trying to get him posted on bail, so they can at least get him outside and back to the world at hand, so that they can figure out what the next move is against the Daversons. Thankfully, during the trial, D.A. Daverson acts so crazy, so all over the place, and it really isn't. It's not 100% set in stone for her and her judgment on her being the one handling this case in terms of her side of things. So the judge decides, like, you know what? Liam's right, or Counsel Walker is right. You are not fit to be defending in this trial or be the prosecutor on this trial. So you're out. But because technically, regardless if he's guilty or not, Grandpa Walker still attempted to bury a piece of evidence. That's still kind of like, you know what? That I don't trust this dude. Like we're putting him in jail, no bail until the next big trial happens. So. It's not a terrible win for the Walker, but it isn't a win. It really it isn't a win. So obviously Cordell walks out because he's just this wasn't the right step for them. They wanted his dad to be out. That wasn't the plan. And then we get we get back a little bit later. So they're all visiting him in the cell. Well, at least Cordell, Liam, and Grandma Walker. And they're all like consoling him. It's like, yeah, no, we know you're right. And again, it's still so weird. Like, again, I know last week's episode had to frame as this big cliffhanger of like, did he really do it? And Grandpa Walker, yeah, like immediately says like the first words out of his mouth is like, I didn't kill him. I didn't do it. I'm not a murderer. I'm not gonna lie. We had problems, but I never killed the dude. Which I'm like, why didn't you say that last week? Like, why couldn't you? Obviously, that built tension for this week's episode. But like, come on, we all knew you were gonna be fine, but still. So they're obviously they're left on that, and the only details that he gave them that were not known to the rest of the Walkers since last time is that yes, there was a meeting, there was some tension. The only other thing, and also that the fact that Marv revealed to Grandpa Walker when they were younger was that he had a kid. Well, he and his wife had another kid, but the kid supposedly had complications, so everyone assumed they died, but then she came back to life. But I'm guessing because he didn't want them to go through this emotional roller coaster to say, I'm going to give away the child. And then, so they left it there. And then, of course, obviously the last we heard was that the child kind of reemerged in conversation throughout the Daverson. So now it's become a question about like that sort of thing. But we'll get to more about that later. So that's the only new piece of information they have, that like there was a daughter. And even like Grandma Walker talks about them later. Like, yeah, there is a Daverson daughter out there that no one knows about except Marv. So that's all they really know about it right now. Back at Texas HQ, all hands are on deck to help out the Walker case, trying to find out any sort of information about Marv's death, trying to find any other suspects to try and at least get Grandpa Walker out of jail, at least for the moment. Cassie's running point on this, and even James is like telling her honestly, like, hey, look, you're still new here. You barely know the Walkers. You barely know the Daversons. If you don't want to be involved in this family feud of a conflict, then you can just easily just get transferred to another case. It's perfectly fine. But she's like, nope, I know Grandpa Walker, or Bonham. I can't pronounce that name very well. I know him. I have a gut feeling that he didn't do this. And so let me help try to fix this thing. And he's like, all right, fair. We can do that. So I believe what happens next was, Walker, everyone, Cordell has to the station to regroup and see what other things they could do. What's their next game plan to get Grandpa Walker out of jail? And James brings up a good point. They're like, well, not a good point. He brings up a new piece of evidence that there was out of the Daverson's account, there was monthly payments to one of the stable hands. And then suddenly a few months before Marv's death, it stopped. So now it's like kind of concerning. I'm like, what happened? Obviously what's going on here. So Cordell and Cassie make a visit to this stable hand now head of his own farm. And initially he thought that, oh, you're here to like, see if you can pawn off some of your former stable hands onto other people. And like, no, I'll take them all. Don't worry. I'll pay them all generously. But Cordell's like, I'm not here for that. So then he brings up the whole thing. And then at first he's like a little defensive. And then once Cordell just like blows the hell up, he had enough of it. It's like, you know what? No, I know you did it. You killed Marv, and then you try to pin some evidence on Walker, Grandpa Walker. And you only knew about this because you knew about the secret daughter, and that was all hush money. So once that paid out, you got mad, and there was a fight, and like that sort of thing. That's the assumption going into it. And the guy's like, I deny everything. Like, next time you show up to this place, it better be with a warrant. So they leave it there. Cassie chews out Walker for blowing up their only like sustainable lead right now. And then comes the weirdest product placement. Okay, not the weirdest product I've ever seen. I mean, Mark Wahlberg literally crashing into a truck full of beer and then drinking one in front of a person just to like insinuate. I really don't know. This real was like, she takes out a bag of Lay's. And she's like, you need to eat. You feel cranky when you're like, that is honestly the weirdest freaking line I've ever heard, to be honest with you. And I'm surprised. Walker got a Lay's sponsorship out of all the shows on the CW. I remember when Arrow was airing, and I think the producer, Mark Guggenheimer, made a joke like, oh yeah, technically on set, they're only allowed to drink regular beer, offhand beer, water. They can't have soda. Like, once Arrow's ratings go up, then we can get a soda partnership with anyone. And I'm like, bro, I mean, okay, I'm not surprised. Walker is still one of the CW's most popular shows. I actually read the demographic. Walker is, I think, #1 right now. So I'm not surprised they got a partnership. But I'm like, it is the weirdest thing to pop. It really is. I was actually another thing before I get back to the plot. I finished up binging a show for an upcoming Quick Impressions in a couple weeks, and literally they had a can of Pringles in the episode, but they put a paid sticker over majority of the logo. So technically you really get, like, apparently according to law, you could technically have, let's say, like this camera charger, for example. I can hold it like this, but I'm covering the brand logo. So it's like, I'm not sponsored by them, but I'm holding this like a prop. If that makes any sense. Like, it's fine if you have something on camera, but you can't put the logo unless you have permission to use the logo. Otherwise, they can sue you. Which I'm like, that is stupid. And that's why I don't wear outfits with teeth. Even though I'm a very small channel, I don't care. I don't wear any logos. I don't put anything. No one can sue me. You want to sue my face? My face is copyrighted. Not really. Anyway, getting back to the plot. Where were we? I really got derailed. Yeah, so Cordell decides to refocus and, like, you know what, split up with Cassie. He needs to go recharge and figure out the case somewhere else, so they split up for a bit. Yeah, I forgot to mention, Grandpa Walker was offered a deal. If he pleaded guilty, he'll do 10 years in prison, 7 years on good behavior. And he was like, absolutely not. And that was another weird thing where, like, Cordell was, like, weirdly, awkwardly saying, like, I was like, oh my God, are you actually going to reveal that, like, yeah, your dad's guilty and that there's no real case to save him? He's like, no, we should fight. I'm like, that is weirdly building up tension for absolutely no reason, but okay, sure. Let's just roll with that. August is at the side stool. He's drinking some beer, some root beer. Jerry comes up to kind of console them, like the loving and / future stepmom that she is. And honestly, again, Jerry has a way with the Walker kids, obviously. Like, she is a Walker by heart, and, you know, last week definitely cemented it, but she definitely is very much in these kids' lives, and she definitely does act like the mother figure that they need right now. And obviously, again, who else would be the perfect, not the replacement, but like the next mom figure in their lives than Jerry? Who else would it be? But that was a great scene between them. It definitely builds on their bond. Which is separately, I know there was another scene where Stella's back at the barn packing up some horse shield, packing up some of the tools, and she knocks over one, and her and August kind of get into it. That if it wasn't for August taking the lantern out of the Davison's barn, none of this would have happened. Which I'm like thinking to myself, yes, but no. Because, I mean, yeah, you could technically say, but like, if it was going to be any other incident that was going to set off these people, if you really think about it, like, it would have been something else and it would have eventually led back to it and the lantern would have been there. So, there you go. That's at least in my opinion. I want to say the next thing we see was Cordell's back at the bar, at his house and he's packing up. D.A. Davidson shows up to kind of like, talked about the matter of him being serious with him. Like, yeah, there's a decent chance that your dad could go to prison, as well as, she was obviously, kind of double checking, like, oh, you went after him? It's like, well, I already cleared him, so I guess you just want to cover my homework, make sure I'm doing this right. Which is kind of obvious, because, like, why would you bring that up if it's already cleared in your brain? Like, don't worry about that. Move on. It's not going to be something you turn over. But her bringing up that fact does shake Cordell a little bit and does bring a bell in his ear. So he said he ends up driving. He calls Cassie about the potential lead he got, and she's like, well, guess what? I decided, you know what? I'm going to save your fuck up. I decided to stay behind to watch this guy. Turns out this guy packed up his entire belongings, cashed out everything he owned at the bank, and is at the side store right now for a couple final shots before he heads out of town. So that doesn't really shake someone who's innocent, which I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that is not an innocent person at all. I want to think of anything before we get to the big confusing revelation, or my most debatable part about this episode. Do we have any other scenes I want to remember? No, I don't think so. So, we head into the side step. The guy walks up to Jerry, asking, "Hey, do you remember me? You remember me?" And she's like, "I don't know you at all." And he's like, "Oh, well, I used to know your dad, and I used to know Marv as well. And there's some things you need to know about before I leave town." Cordell and Cassie come in trying to like potentially just stop him from escaping or whatsoever, and he comes out clean. They're like, yeah, no, there is something I'm hiding. I didn't kill Marv, but I'm privy to some knowledge that you should know about. So it's time for flashback time. This is the flashback story we were waiting for. I wasn't expecting like the promos last week definitely painted me as like, oh, it was gonna be the entire episode Cordell and Grandpa Walker just sitting inside the holding cell and just talking about like the whole story, or at least Bottom's attempt at the whole story. And so in this instant so this is focusing on Jerry a little bit. So this guy knew Jerry's dad. And we know, like they mentioned this in this episode and a couple times earlier this season, is that Jerry moved around a lot. Before she settled in Austin, she moved around a lot because she had a condition that was very hard to treat, and they had to jump around hospital to hospital in order to like get the treatments. And of course, obviously, with this sort of thing, most insurances are not going to cover it, so they had to pay a lot out of pocket. And when you're jumping around, not being able to hold a steady job as well as trying to provide some sort of livable income, it's very difficult to kind of have that thing. So he helped out Jerry and her dad a lot during that time period, especially them crashing at his place when they were back in Austin. And they mentioned, they at one point in the past before Jerry was born, they were both stable hands for the Daversons, specifically Marv. So when they returned to Austin with this big experimental, but obviously it worked, treatment that could be used to save Jerry's life, it was of course very expensive. They couldn't afford it. So they decided, you know what, let's do a robbery. Let's rob Marv because there were some payments that Marv skipped out on. There was some, and also he was just a piece of shit paying his workers. So they're like, this is overdue payment. So they agreed, and of course Jerry's like a little bit confused, like, no, my dad would never do this. He's never a thief, but they did. So they knew that Marv had a special compartment in the barn, in his barn, like not all of his secret money, but like enough to pay for Jerry's hospital bills. So they head over, they break in, they get it, they find the loose hatchel, and they get the money. But when they were on their way out, obviously that's when the fire started, and then that's when they escaped. But however, when they were escaping, the smoke kind of got to both of them. One got away, Jerry's dad, and the other dude passed out for a while. So I assume, like, wait, hold on. If he passed out like that, does that mean that then why did they skip them in the police report like the next day, like during the news coverage? But we'll get to that in a second. So he did wake up, and the first thing he saw was Grandpa Walker, then just Dad Walker, breaking into the barn, but the energy he gave up wasn't because he wanted to kill someone, because he was trying to save whoever was inside, which obviously is true. Obviously, if you see a burning building and you know someone is in there, regardless of your condition about that, you're gonna go try and get in there to save them. So that was the last thing he saw. But he got away before he was caught. And the next thing he saw, he gets back to the car where Jerry's dad was supposed to meet him, and he finds him with the money, but he finds his hands all bloodied up. And all he says was like, "Don't worry about Marv. He's gone. He's not gonna be a problem anymore." At the time, obviously, the next day, Marv was dead, and people just assumed that the fire probably killed him. Now, before I continue any further, as a creative person, a creative person that has made a couple of montages in his heyday, this would have been a very I think it still do it. I mean, we still have like a fair amount of episodes before the season finale. This season doesn't end until the end of June, so I'm like, oof, we still got ways to go. But for me, like if I was to like had edited this episode, I would have loved there to be a shot of Walker thinking about his side of things, where like he was the one who accidentally dropped the lantern and then him causing the fire. It would have been a very nice like parallel of like getting the whole story. But we're not. For me, I don't think we have the full story yet. There's still a couple of interesting details left out. Specifically, how did Marv die? How did that fight scene turn out? And then also, how did Grandpa Walker even know about everything? Because like there's still a pretty sizable distance between the Walker and the Davison properties at the time. So like, how did he even get there? Like, there's still a couple of things that, like, they could still make that scene happen, but this would have been a very good moment for Walker to starting to have those flashbacks again of, like, his side of thing. Like, he was at the barn that night, but what was his side of the story? So then that's kind of his pitch to, like, yeah, so, but Jerry's just confused on the fact, like, my dad would never kill someone just for that. He would never. Again, this is like the next piece of interesting choice where Walker interjects and has his own theory. And he's like, well, those payments you got from Marv were not really payments for work. It was hush money about his secret daughter. Well, not a secret daughter. His daughter that is legitimized, but was kept a secret about her existence. You got paid money for that to keep that secret. Once that ran out, that's why you went after him specifically. And the fact is, this was a very big, like, there was no collaborating. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you could just say, like, oh, why is Jerry's dad, like, fighting so much for this, especially agreeing so quickly to go after Marvin. Not Marvin. And Walker's big jump of leap, which apparently was true, was that the secret daughter, is in fact Jerry. Jerry is the secret daughter. Marv gave her away to him because he was a stable hand, so he's like, here's a kid, like, here's a kid, there you go, you're now a dad, and please keep this quiet from my wife because it would basically destroy her. So that was the thing. I was like, what? I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense, like better than introducing another random character that was going to, like, it makes sense on like for a story perspective to make Jerry the secret Davidson. I could definitely understand what story direction they're going to go in that with the remaining season 2. I was like, that came out of nowhere. And like, definitely they were setting up a lot of, like, this is usual Walker stuff. Like, they go very fast. I was expecting we were going to be stuck with Walker dealing with this mystery for a while. Not like the whole season, the rest of the season, but like a couple more weeks. Not like the entire episode was like, yeah, no, your dad is innocent. Jerry's dad, well, her dad, but like not her dad. Yeah, he did it. He killed him. Again, we still have many more flashbacks to go. I'm pretty sure there was some extra third party who witnessed everything, or maybe Grandpa Walker did notice something. Who the hell knows? But I'm pretty sure we're gonna get back to this scene at some point later this season. But for me, like, that was an interesting twist because I was like not expecting that. I wasn't even thinking that Jerry could be the secret daughter. Like, I don't even know what to expect. I honestly thought it was just going to be a random secret daughter. Like, we don't have to worry about that. That's not our concern with this story. I'm glad they actually kind of remember that and kind of, like, brought it up and they figured it out. But I'm like, okay, that settles it. But, like, obviously Jerry's, like, under a world of shock. Not only that the figure she fought in her life was her dad, wasn't really her biological dad, but also that he murdered people. And also the person who actually was her dad is still dead. So I'm not surprised Jerry's got a bunch of emotions wrapped up in her right now. So I'm not really surprised on that front. So from there, yeah, so Jerry retreats back to another room in the side step. Walker tries to console her and tries to, like, talk to her about, like, this doesn't change anything. You're still Jerry. You're still yourself. you're still a Walker at heart, so this doesn't change anything. Your dad was still your dad. It just happens to be you have another dad, a biological dad. And Jerry's like, no, that this changes everything, because my whole personality, my whole upbringing was based on my dad's life. And now I have another dad that I never knew about who was already dead, and then my dad actually killed him. Like, that is going to make an impact on you. Like, that isn't something you can just walk away from. Like, that is something you got to think about for a second. It's like, that happened. That's a thing. So what's next? So they ended there eventually. I'm guessing the guy confesses in court, and then that's enough to exonerate Grandpa Walker. So he's out of jail. So he's free to go. I know they are trying to get to the exact moving day. The entire ranch is empty. The entire house is empty. And, Walker and Grandma Walker have like a nice parting words with the house. That, this wasn't how we expected it to happen, but it is what it is. And, we're just going to have to keep trucking through life regardless. And for me, I do believe we will get back to the Walker Ranch eventually. I don't think this is the end of the story for them. They're definitely going to get back at some point, maybe at the end of the season, who knows. So, but they have to go. They have to leave for now. So Grandpa Walker gets out. Liam offers to take him back to the ranch to like have one more look around, and he's like, no, like right now it's just a desolate wasteland of how things were. I don't want to be reminded of that. Let's just go to the side stool, get a drink, and then, kind of think about what's next for us, moving forward. So they headed back to the side stool. The entire Walker family's back together again, even though they were just together last week, but sure, why not? They're all like, I think Grandma Walker says it best, like, yeah, right now we may have lost our home, but home is wherever we all are. So as long as we're all together, we're fine. Still no word on Jerry. Jerry's kind of been silent from Walker, trying to like figure this out for a bit. And then from that moment, they all celebrate. They all have some breakfast, trying to like, you take the small victories when you can. Like, yeah, they still don't have a home, but they got their whole family back together. So that's something. Jerry shows up at the Davison's door. Obviously, I'm assuming like D.A. Davison and now Grandma Davison know the truth that, yeah, she is the missing daughter. She is the secret daughter that they were supposed to have. And obviously Grandma Davis is like, oh, Frill, like, this is the best piece of news of my life. My other daughter's still alive. Very, very chill reaction from D.A. Davison. She's just like taking it all in, like nothing is wrong. Very weird. Of course, Grandma Davis is overwhelmed with joy that her second daughter's back home. Jerry's still a little hesitant because like this is still brand new territory for her. She doesn't know how to like really react to this next, and they're both willing to take a baby step, so like take it the right step at a time. Try to figure out if there should be a connection here, or we'll see what goes. We'll see how it goes. The episode ends with Jerry heading inside the Davison house, accepting the fact that this is her real new family, and we end it there. So for me, my interesting choice is that, keep in mind, we've seen this plot device a lot of times in the world. Don't get me wrong, even the shows I've watched, which is only 100, there's thousands of shows out there. The whole like secret family, or like this new undiscovered family thing, yeah, I've seen it before. And hell, this was Mickey's storyline last season. Like, Mickey discovering she had her mother wasn't her real biological mother. We had that last season with her, and now we're getting it with Jerry. But the thing was with Mickey, like the thing I talked about when we were wrapping up season 1 and going into season 2, I really wanted to see Mickey handle those. What does it mean to have another mom? How does that connection get built up again? I wanted to see that, but we never did, because obviously, right, she had to go. So now we're getting that with Jerry, which I'm happy that we're getting some sort of representation of that storyline. It just kind of feels awful, like you just were trying that with another character last season. And yeah, that character's not around anymore. But still, like, you kind of have to count your chickens where they lie. Like, it happened. We had that storyline already, and now we're having it again. The only interesting dynamic I will take of this is that now Jerry was symbolically a Walker, but biologically she's a Davison. So where does that go with them? Like, next week's promo definitely indicates that Jerry is starting to like feel the influence of the Davisons a little bit. So just because, yeah, her and Walker are in a relationship, yes, she's grown up with the Walkers. You still can't deny she has Davison blood in her. So how do we go from there is going to be a very big question. Will that enhance the plot to kind of like, And also, again, the Davises kind of like gave up on the whole like murder mystery. Like again, like I know it's properly solved now, but it's still kind of weird that they were making such a big deal out of this, and then we never got to see an on-camera reaction of them like reacting to this news. Okay, it's an hour long, it's a 44-minute show, so like there's only so many scenes you can fit in there. But for me, I would have liked to see some sort of reaction from them, but I guess we didn't. I guess the only other thing I could say about this thing is that I'm just interested. You know, obviously we still have I want to say 5 more episodes to go before the finale. I know we end in June, but we still have a decent amount of episodes to go. How do they continue the conflict? Because obviously I know the Walker's priority right now is to get a home. Whether or not that be to get back to Walker Ranch or find a new home is another question. But the Walker Davison like feud, I know it's not over, but I'm just curious. Like, are they going to use Jerry as like another tool to kind of stick it to the Walkers? They're like, hey, your friend that you were super close with is now one of us. Like, I don't know. Like, I really don't. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it. I'm open to anything. I'm just hoping it's not corny, it's not predictable, and it feels right for the story. That's what I hope. But we'll find out about that next week. But for this week's episode, as much as I enjoyed it a lot, not talking about it, I do enjoy it much more than my original thoughts were. I was a little bit amiss that they're gonna reuse a storyline or repurpose a storyline genre just for the sake of the current story arc, which I don't mind. Walker still moves at a very, very brisk pace, but you know, still something that even I'm still getting used to. But I'm gonna give this episode 1.5 thumbs up. So I still enjoyed it. It's just a couple critiques. I still have them. So let me know in the comments below, what did you think of this week's episode of Walker? As always, I love to talk to you guys down below. Please leave a comment and we'll start the conversation. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Tube, reviewing every episode in the second season of Walker. If you want to know what we're doing normally at What's the Tube, besides our Walker episode reviews, we're currently also doing the rookie episode reviews each and every Monday mornings after a brand new episode on Sundays on ABC. So check that out then. If you don't care about Walker, you're in luck. We'll be back next week with another episode review, so stay tuned until then. But again, this has been What's the Tube from ActionX. Please subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring that bell for notification where our next episode review is live. Please also like, favorite, share if you want to. Please also ring the bell. Please also follow us on social media to stay up to date with any sort of updates we may have for either of our channels, which also includes the Collision Compass. Go check that out right now. But until we see each other again next week, for all you Texas Rangers out there, I'll see you all then. But until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.